that is far more beautiful than Vanna White, and her apparel, which is donated by Synod 2013. What we are going to do is we are going to launch a new fundraising campaign. We've been told that just change the direction a little bit. We're going to change the direction. There are cards at your table. Those are your bidding cards. All right? You need to know that the funds raised by this will go to the CRC Foundation. All right? This is a significant moment. From this moment on, the financial direction of the denomination starts to climb. So I want you to talk to John Bolt with regard to your tax receipts afterwards. Well, let's have an opening bid. A little bit of $10 now, anywhere we got 10, I've got now 20. $20 anywhere, anybody want to bid with 20, 20, I've got
Yes.
now 30. 30, I've got now 40, 40, oh, isn't that 40 now? 40
Yes.
now, 50 now, 50 now, 60
Yo.
70 now, 70
Yes.
80 now. At 80, anywhere, anybody want to bid with $80?
Yes.
I've got now 90, 90,
Yes.
I've got now 100.
Yes.
100, I've got now 20, 120,
Yes.
120, now 40.
Yes.
140 now 50.
Yo.
150, 60.
Yes.
160,
Yo.
180, anywhere, $180, $170 and I sold.
Yo. One more.
$170. I've got it right over here. Thank you very much. Now you have to know that there are 28 more of those in the officers' lounge. And I'm going to invite all of the others who are bidding at the same price. We're not going to bid them up again because the next time I put them up, they'll go to 250, 300, 400 because these are going to become valuable. This is an investment. So I'm going to invite you, if you're at your table right now and you'd like to make your donation, write your name on your card and bring it forward. If you're not quite sure what you're going to do with yours, you can use it as a doorstop. You can use it for something else. Or I'd really like to have one person buy one and bring it over to the table of the youth advisors. That way they can push buttons all they want and it's not going to bother anybody. All right, so if you've got your name on a card, it's going to be a first come, first served basis. Only 28 people are going to be able to make a donation in this way, in this historic moment to the CRC Foundation. Write your name on your card, hold them up, stand up, and our clerk will gather those cards. Praise God. There's another one. Anybody else want to come forward? Don't worry, the buses will wait. Nobody else will go. The buses will wait. You can come forward with your cards.
This is a come to Jesus moment.
Peter Borgdorf is coming forward.
Come, come. Come one, come all.
Come one and come all, says Reggie. Here comes number 140. He's got his card in the air. 140. Carpool is in. Lauren Veldheisen just bought one. Vicariously. To a friend. This is your table. Okay, you can do it by table. You can do it by classes. Tom Walks and his classes. Archie Vanderhart is coming forward. Linda. What's the last name? Linda Heckman. Marvelous. Who else is coming forward? They're going fast. How many cards have you got there? Seven cards. That leaves
21.
21 more.
Oh,
Here we go. That'll do. You can hand in a little slip of yellow paper. You can hand in your credit card or your driver's license or your passport for Canadians if you want to use that. Well, stand up and sing it. You know what? We're going to put them back up. We're going to put them back up. Who will start the bidding? Who will bid about $10? Anybody anywhere going to bid about 10? Anywhere 10? I've got now 20. 20 I've got now 30. 30 anywhere, 30 I've got now 40. $40 and 50 now. 50 anywhere. 50 I've bid now 60. 60 I've got now 7. That's $70. Anyone, anybody going to bid about 70? $70. That's 70. I've got it now 80. $80 you want to bid about 80. 80 I've got now 90. $90. Hey, $90. 90 I've got now 100. $100. Next person to say 100 has got it. 100 sold. Okay, there's one sold at $100. They're not even going to trust the delegates to give them one. They made sure they've got buttons to push there at the youth advisor table. Thank you so much. You've got a vision for the CRC Foundation. Who else wants one at $100? Here's your opportunity, $100 to the foundation fund. You'll get your tax receipt. Anybody else? Write your names. I know you're writing your names right now. Ben has got one in the back. John, have you got yours? You got yours. I hope you paid $200 for it. Got another card here from John Koiker. Thank you, John. Who else? I'm going to tell you, we're not going to put them up once more. You're not going to get one for $10. You're not going to get one for 20 or 25 or even $95. $100 is as low as we're going on this. Tom Bima. Here, Lauren. Got Karen Gertzma and Louis Denbach. Anybody else? Cal? That's okay, we remember you, Calvin. And Nick. Last opportunity. Thank you so much. The CRC Foundation thanks you.
I didn't realize our president had so many gifts. Well, we'll continue our conversation with the 5 streams, and I'm going to ask Scott Greenway and Jewel Mendenblick to come on back up, and then we will have our speakers, and then we'll go in this order: Corey, Cameron, and Paul.
Corey Plockmeyer, Classis Lake Erie. A lot of the research, and I can affirm that from working with campus ministry and the students that I work with, shows that young adults are increasingly distrusting of institutions. And in my experience, I feel more restructurings and realignments and revisionings in my relatively short experience than I really care to have seen. And so I find myself mildly skeptical whether this is really a complete reshaping of the way we do ministry and a real change to the culture, or whether it's simply another reshuffling of taking the same pieces and moving them around on the board. And I wonder, how are we going to ensure that this is more than just a reshuffling, but really changing the culture of our denomination?
Am I supposed to address you or him? Mr. Chairman, thank you for the question. I think it's important to realize that the 5 streams is just one component in the work of our task force. And in my mind, this is one component that speaks to how we communicate to our constituency what we're about as a denomination. And our desire is that we have a tool here that speaks with simplicity and with clarity and is truly representative of all the activities of our agencies, institutions, and offices. So I I hear what the delegate is saying, but we don't necessarily view this as a tool that's going to reduce skepticism and all the rest. It hopefully will be used as, again, a tool which, in very simple terms and very broad terms, communicates what we're about.
Thank you.
Let me also suggest, and I'm speaking now not as executive director but chair of the task force, but let me suggest that what you're thinking about and talking about right now is not nearly so much a change in structure as it is symbolic of a new way of working together. And that's what those streams want to portray.
And once again, appreciate the question. And just as a reporter, to note that one of the things that we want to remind the delegates here, especially since this is your year, maybe your first year here, that last year we had a report from the task force reviewing structure and culture. We're scheduled to report to Synod next year and the following year. There's many things that we're still looking at in terms of organization and awards, but we understand culture trumps structure. Culture is really a part of what we do in terms of how we do work together. It's interesting in terms of the conversations we've been even having here the last few days. Great appreciation for the work of Calvin Seminary or Calvin College or World Renew, World Missions, but it seems as if we talk about our work together, all of a sudden we don't feel quite so positive about that. Why is it that we're so positive about our individual agencies and institutions, but still have wondering about how we're doing together? And it's probably because of we got to work on how we work it together.
Thank you. Cameron, Paul, then Bill.
Cameron Fraser, Alberta South and Saskatchewan. I appreciate that you don't want to segregate, prioritize these, well, the light was on. You don't want to segregate and prioritize these streams, but there does seem to be a flow to them. And I'm just wondering why preaching the gospel and worship comes at the end. I would have thought that would have been at the beginning.
That's a great question. Let me take that on. If you look at, and I'm going to look at 381 unless they can get it up on the screen for us again, but at least at 381 you'll have a little bit of a sense. And once again, to get a little bit of even the story of how we did align these. And once again, I would prefer if we could visualize it, that we visualize it as a circle that continues to inform and work together, or maybe you think of the currents of a stream coming together. So for example, you have faith formation as we think about what it means to introduce a person and nurture faith in Jesus Christ. And one of the things that we then identify that you're a believer, you have certain gifts and you need to use them in service for his church and for his kingdom, servant leadership. That what we do is centered on our mission, global mission. And that obviously part of that global mission is not only recognizing and bringing the word of God, but we also frame it within terms of being kingdom citizens of the world. And certainly as we continue to develop, we have a trajectory related to gospel proclamation and worship. As we grow as disciples, we continue to deepen our worship before God. And by the way, because of that gospel proclamation and that worship, we're starting all over again. Because people come to believe by hearing the word of God. So if you see it as a straight line, sorry. That's the way it's graphically maybe presented. If you think about the currents that need to flow and work together, then I think we're a little closer to the image we're hoping to help us have.
Paul, and then Bill.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll do that, right? Paul Verhoof, Classis Alberta South and Saskatchewan. I know I've dominated microphone time. I am going to continue to try just for a little bit longer. We'll get there. Is that okay, Mr. Chair? You'll maybe have noticed or recognized that when I was emceeing, I get a little anxious. And sometimes what's funny when I'm anxious is I go back to the culture that I have carried with me for too long. And in this case, one of those is in the Verhoof family, we make fun of each other. And so I kind of roasted my dad, right? When I hear, I'm just going to pick on a couple sentences. When I hear, what is it that we really want our congregations to rally around? Or how do we communicate what we're about? I hear a Christian Reformed church that's going back to a culture that I think needs to change. Because I hear it those two sentences sound like we've decided what we're about and we need to communicate that to the congregations. And I think what happened so well in the Canadian conversation that was led by Ben Van de Zand is that when we got to the end of the process, when I read that report, I look at that report and I say, it's captured everything I've said. I already feel a part of it when we get to the report. And so I actually look at these 5 streams and I think they are brilliant. And I do recognize that actually the 5 streams parallel very, very well with the way that the Canadian conversation went. And I recognize what the Faith Formation Committee said yesterday, which is we've been doing this on the ground. But these particular 5 streams, and they feel to me like a task force on whatever, all the words, have come up with them. And I might be wrong about that. But it feels like they've come up with them instead of when I come to Synod saying, I remember when they asked me what I was excited about. And so instead of hearing things like, what is it that we really want the congregations to rally around, or how do we communicate what we're about, we say, what is it that the congregations asked us to rally around, right? And that to me feels like a shift in our culture that I'm really excited to be a part of. And that has happened. But this particular piece feels to me like perhaps our anxiety has gotten a little bit high, and instead of spending the time listening, maybe we've come up with something first. And again, I may be wrong, but that's what it feels like to me.
Thank you, Paul, for your question. I could defer to Scott Greenway because those were his words, not mine, but I'll try to take a nap. So thank you, Scott. No. But I think you rightly note that this has to be lived out for the local church and out of the local church context. I also want to make note that as we came to these kind of conversations, we come at it knowing that there already is a stream, and there's streams that are already existing. And so as a church that we've already identified that these are some of the things that we're living with and toward. So to maybe Tom's question earlier about why we just use the word faith formation as one of those 5 streams, it's because of the conversations that we've had, particularly over the last few years, related to that. So we took our work not as identifying, let's see what the best that we could do, but already what the church has identified in those conversations through classes, through various synods, through the works of boards and agencies that currently already exist. In other words, we didn't come to it and say, let's disregard the conversation with the church that has been existing, but let's highlight and understand that conversation and helping us come to better conversations on this together. So as you look at particularly this material, I would once again, and we're going to get to those recommendations, that is very intentional for us is that we're inviting you to endorse these as ministry or mission priorities for discussion and discernment within the church. We consider this an ongoing dialogue. The church is the first listed in that grouping, and then agencies, boards, and planning groups. And to your point as raised earlier, we have been benefited by that there has been a faith formation table. There's been a strategic planning table. There's been a Canadian ministries table. And we have actually had the opportunity to bring people in and continue that conversation. So hopefully it does feel like, as we particularly know from the Canadians Ministries report, that became part of our report as well. So I'm just trying to give you some of those moments along the way that it feels not something top down, but instead becomes what is really the church hopefully going to rally around, to use that language, because it already has.
All right, thank you. Bill, Dan, and then Neil.
Bill Vanderhyde, Classes Heartland, speaking in support. 3 points. First point, this is a huge plate of spaghetti. And knowing even which strand to pick up and start with just awes me. And I just want to say how appreciative I am of the work you've done. Second point, I woke up this morning thinking this has got to be my last synod because I don't even know where to go anymore. And I don't know what to do, and I don't know how I can be used. And hearing this report, even if it's not adopted, has been used by the Lord to refresh and renew me, so thank you for that. Third point, could we please hear from our young adult representatives and ethnic advisors on this? Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
All right. Dan.
Dan Brink, Classes Greater Los Angeles. I want to expand a little bit on what Tom Dreyer said earlier. I really liked seeing the video. Thanks for showing that from the Evangelical Covenant Church. It was great. And one of the things that I really appreciated is the expressions were short and crisp, included verbs and actions. And in one sermon, the whole church could know exactly what we're about. And they put it in its proper intuitive order in that video, you know, a little different than what it's on 366. We start and strengthen churches. We make and deepen disciples. We develop leaders. We love mercy and do justice. We serve globally. The presentation, the organization of denominational ministries around those action words was fantastic. That made me want to join the Evangelical Covenant Church. Yeah. Thank you. And I'm saying it's not the content, but it doesn't sing to me, you know, gospel proclamation and worship. I mean, what about it? You know, it doesn't, there's no action. It's not like a simple encapsulation of what we do. And I would hope that maybe we could get to that point and avoid the sort of ministerial inventory of religious expression.
Just to let you know, we are in favor of action words and verbs. We also are mindful as we share of the 5 stones, because I think to go very directly to this, there was moments where we said, why don't we just adopt what they've already said? But we're more adapters in some ways. And we want to be cautious about that. And we want to make sure that we already articulate some of the things that we and how we share that. And so we will take this input as good input. But also note that we probably do need to make it our own. And we're just at the very beginning of that journey.
Neil, Norman, and Nicole.
Neil Jaspers, Grand Rapids North. The 5 streams strike me as a really helpful way to think about ministry together conceptually. Now I'm wondering how that would work out organizationally, or is that a further step down the road? I mean, we have our various agencies. How would this interface with the structure of our ministry?
I'm not trying to be coy or mysterious when I say this, but remember that blue slide that kept popping up that we never dealt with? That had all kinds of little lines under each of the streams? That wasn't supposed to be in there, and it's not because we were keeping it a secret, but it's because we're in the process of working out the answer to the question you asked, Neil, and what that slide did show was all the pieces arranged in a potential way under those headings. But that's the goal.
Okay, Norman is, no, you passed? Norman, did you pass? Okay. Nicole.
Nicole Vinkamp, Young Adult Representative. And I just want to say that I was very encouraged and excited by this report, just reading it and seeing the directions that the denomination is going in and the things that we're thinking hard about. And one of the things that I've really come to appreciate, and I'm learning to appreciate more and more about the CRC, is that we think deeply about things and that we're not afraid to wrestle with difficult questions, and that we value our creeds and our confessions, and we think hard about what we believe and why we believe it. And I'm really excited to see us now applying that same thoughtfulness to what we do, what our mission in the world is, and how we connect what we believe with the agencies and with everything that we do at a local level, at a classical level, and at a denominational level. And so I'm just really encouraged and excited by this, and I'm looking forward to seeing what this task force continues to bring to us. Thanks.
Thank you, Nicole. Kevin Cal Theody.
Kevin Duraff, Classes Hamilton. I want to express my appreciation for the task force and the direction that it's moving in. What kind of at the heart of it is this culture change deal. And the question is, where does that culture shift happen? Is it at the local church level, or is it at the agency level? And of course, it has to be at both, but where does it really begin? Where's the heart of it? And I think one of the things I've loved about the report is that it really speaks strongly to the importance of the shift happening at the local level. But some of the language seems to reflect a little bit more of kind of the agency level. And Scott reflected some of that even when he talked about the subheading under this in terms of denominational priorities. And an example for that, for me, is the name of one of the streams, which is global missions. And at the local church level, when you read that, that immediately sees the starting point as out there. In a way, looking at Acts 1, starting at the ends of the earth and then working your way back to Jerusalem to where it's at home. If the name was something more along the lines of engaging mission, and the priority is on the start point of the local church, Jerusalem, Judea, then out to the ends of the earth, I think it has a very different focus. And if the goal is really to invite our churches to embrace these streams and to see them lived fully at the local level, I think some of that language is really important, and the way that it's communicated and the kinds of headings, not just with action verbs, but on the priority of, man, we can live this here and now, and then we're in this together, and then our agencies and our broader ministries are on board with us supporting what we're doing, I think is really important. So just looking for some consistency of language there. So thank you.
Thanks. Thank you for that insight, and appreciate too the vision of what it means to be that closely aligned and have the same heartbeat.
The terms, but what they signify. And if you have better ideas of how to label them for all of us, we're certainly open to that. We're not stuck with those words if we endorse these 5 streams.
All right, thank you. Cal, Theody, Mark, John, and Joe, and Grace, we have 5 more speakers, and I want to cut it off at right there, and then we can continue on to move towards the recommendations. Cal.
Yes, I would like to speak in favor of endorsing these 5 streams. I think it would be profitable in working this out, as Joel has described it, also to look at the 5 marks of mission, as these have been adopted by the Anglican Communion for 2 major reasons. One is they put into active voice their 5 marks. They're similar to ours, but I won't read the whole thing, but it's to proclaim, to teach, to respond, to seek, to strive. So putting it into the active, as some others have stated, would be helpful as we develop these themes. Secondly, I think what we should do is more explicitly reference, not necessarily by text and verse, but reference the creation stewardship decision of the Synod, which was made last year with a unanimous, with a standing ovation, the singing of "This Is My Father's World." It was a tremendously moving moment. And in response to this, I suggest that the people responsible for revising, for developing, for working on these 5 streams look particularly at the Anglicans' 5th mark of mission, namely to strive to safeguard the integrity of creation and sustain and renew the life of the earth. Thank you.
Theody Corton from Classes Toronto. I am here and I want to speak in support of the 5-stream. And I would like to congratulate the task force for coming up with this report, with their work. Praise the Lord for your work and your effort. And the reason I'm supporting these 5 streams is because I am seeing here a direction where God is lifting up the CRC in North America. With this 5 stream, I am seeing it as a holistic and a word and deed ministry of advancing the kingdom of God. And if I have to speak specifically for our council, the Grace CRC in Scarborough will be celebrating our 50th anniversary on November 10 of 2013. And there is this conversation within the council. So we said, what will be in the next 50 years? And I, as a new in the council, and as I say, like, I just joined the council a year ago, and I'm seeing more and more of vacant pews in during our Sunday service. I said, we have to be faithful to our calling to advance the kingdom of God in the place where God has planted us, that is in the Scarborough area, where there are more and more new immigrants settling in. So with these 5 streams now, where the denomination is proposed to be moving forward, I am seeing that our council will be helped. The council will be served, and it will be of help to the council to see the direction where we could go in the next 50 years of our life, of our congregational life. Thank you very much.
Really, thank you very much, and we celebrate with you as you celebrate 50 years of church. Mark, John, Joe.
Yeah, Mark Van de Zan from Classes of the Heartland, not to be confused with the Ben Van de Zan from Canada. So I really do like your 5 streams. And what we have done in the denomination is really often use acronyms for things. We talk about the ED and the deputy ED or whatever and all those things. Is there potential in the 5 streams and the titles of that to be some sort of acronym that would be able to be encapsulated by the church and allow the church to hold on to that a little bit stronger? I know some people work better and memorize those things a little bit better with some sort of acronym in that light, like maybe using the word water because it's in the stream, just as an example. I don't know what that would mean or how that would process itself. And in response to the people that are talking a little bit about the verbiage and using verbs, you have to start someplace with a title, and underneath the title comes the verbs of how we're going to do this. So I'm not all in favor of using verbs in the titles of these areas, because underneath those titles you do get how you do this, how you go about doing this. So using the nouns or what it is, I think, is not a bad thing. Underneath you describe what that's all about. So I'm in favor of the recommendation, and I appreciate all that you guys have done with regards to the 5 streams.
John.
I really love the metaphor of water, which is implied by these streams. And for that reason, I do support the work of the task force. There's a possibility that you might be able to make it even better with a suggestion that I'm about to propose. Instead of making it streams, let it be part of a water cycle. I substitute teach every once in a while. I had to substitute teach in a biology class. You know what the water cycle is. There's the ocean, the lakes, and then from there the evaporation takes place. Precipitation comes down. There's transpiration in the plants. There's penetration into the soil. There's respiration and so forth. And my colleague Mark just made a pregnant thought come into my mind. We could use the acronym PETRA. Precipitation, evaporation, transpiration, respiration, assimilation. But anyway, I think all the facets of what you're trying to, incorporate might come through loud and clear, because we know that Jesus proclaimed himself to be the living water. And that doesn't just go down one stream and go to a lake and an ocean and sit there. It recycles.
Thank you.
Joe, then Grace Withdrawal, and then John.
Yo, Skelton, BC Northwest. Thank you for this conversation, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for allowing some time. I think it's good for us to do that. And, you know, we all want to help this conversation. I'm thankful for what you've done. I'm thankful for what I sense the energy behind the reports, wanting to do good for the denomination. And I'm in general agreement with this, in favor of this, especially as, Jewel, you're just saying, we want to put this out to the denomination and to the congregations, get some feedback. And whether it's 3 or 5 or 7 streams, in some sense, it doesn't really matter to me. But what matters to me is that there is a single vision for the denomination. Because all these 5 things are good, but there needs to be something that captures our hearts and minds. I hear it actually this synod. I'm so thankful. But if I can make a small suggestion, and I want to be helpful, but when I read Transforming Lives and Communities Worldwide, I want to say amen, but I want to add something. I want to say, for the sake of, for the glory of, for the honor of Jesus Christ. Now, I know we all assume it, but I'd love to see it in print, that anywhere where this book would go, or anywhere where our denominational materials would go, the name of Jesus would go with it. So for me, to be honest, nothing less than Jesus Christ and his honor and glory will satisfy my work as a pastor. These 5 streams are great, the report is great, your work is great, but I would like to be a bit more in print with the name of Jesus. I'm so thankful. I hear it so often here at Synod. I'd like to see a bit more in print. And just one question in terms of, is there any thought about the process? You're going to put this out to the congregations, hopefully eventually, fairly soon. How will that happen? Do I lead the conversation, or will members of the team come, or will there be something online for us to submit ideas or suggestions?
Well, we're meeting next week. Do you want to address that?
I don't have the answer for you, Joe, but we are meeting the task force next week. If Synod endorses these streams, they're ours. They're yours. This conversation will give all of you a head start. And again, don't feel bound by the vocabulary, but the concept. And I'm sure that the task force will do more with it, but this is as far as we got.
John.
I assume there's a lot of Johns here, but I guess it's me. This is John Bowers from Classes Toronto. I'm with Joe. To me, they're just baskets to have a conversation, so I guess it seems everybody's pretty positive. But I just want to say a word of, I don't know, maybe a little bit of pushback on this. It seems to me that these 5 streams are not so different from the headings of agencies that we already have in the Christian Reformed Church. And often we sort of speak of agencies, or we talk about silos as being a negative thing. I think it's great. These agencies focus on what they're about. I don't see always silos as a negative thing. World Missions does what it does, World Relief, etc., or World Renew. So I'm not against that idea, but I question whether having slightly blurring these sort of different foci is really moving us towards a culture change. I would rather see headings or streams that kind of run across all the agencies, that run across these foci. And maybe just give you one particular example. I'll just leave it at that. Again, I'll vote with the community. I just think one of the ways I think about it, I think of the person of Jesus. Like, Jesus said, "As the Father sent me, so I'm sending you." I just love that. So I think of Jesus. Well, how was Jesus sent? The first thing I think about Jesus, I think about the incarnation. And I think about how he brought the kingdom present. And I think if there's a blind area in our denomination or history, it's that incarnating the gospel in the local community. Neil Plantinga actually wrote in a devotional, and he quotes from the Genevan Catechism that was connected with John Calvin, where there was a question and answer that asked, he points out there's a comma between Jesus, born of the Virgin Mary, suffered under Pontius Pilate, that the whole of the incarnation in the Apostles' Creed is covered by a comma. And the question was asked, why is that all that it says in the Apostles' Creed? And the answer was that there was nothing of redemptive significance. If Jesus was born and died, that's all that really mattered. There was really nothing of redeeming significance in the entirety of his life. And Neil Plantinga, in his gracious way, said they must have been sleeping that day. So I guess I'm just bringing it around and say I think there's a sense in which in these 5 streams that I see even the incarnation feels missing. And certainly for the local church, that's where our challenge is. How do we bring the gospel present to unchurched people when we're often so busy with the great different foci that we have? So anyways, I'm going to vote with the group and let's get going forward. But I would just really challenge the group to think, are there ways of sort of putting these foci so they cut across all that we do instead of really just sort of being fairly parallel to what we do?
Right. Thank you for that comment. One of the challenges we had is even how to graphically represent it. So I'm going to have you just do a simple exercise at 381 if you just look at it to read it, and if you do have it open there, and you just turn it 90 degrees. Because one of the questions is, could we see that these are running across all our work? Faith formation, servant leadership, and like. So just even thinking about it, if you turn it just a little bit, what is the flow really looking like? And once again, appreciate the conversation that started here and look forward to continuing.
Thank you. And then Grace, as you had a little geometry going on there.
I'm Grace Krulin from Classes Lake Erie, and I've done a lot of work as a elder on structure of our local church and moving the congregation forward. And so the very first report I read was this one, because I saw all those graphs and, it was very exciting. It's complicated. It's way too complex right now. But I do urge you to listen to local churches and to get some of their voice so that the simplicity can be there where it will really be able to inform those kinds of structuring efforts at the local level as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. We're going to cease debate right now. We're going to turn to the recommendations, which you'll find in your advisory committee 1C, 2C2, which will be on page 2. And we will start at number 2 because we've already approved number 1.
Hi, my name is Archie. I'm a committee reporter. Number 2, that Synod endorse the ministry priorities as identified in the 5 Streams document in Appendix B to the Task Force Reviewing Structure and Culture Report for discussion and discernment within the church, its agencies, boards, and planning groups. Mr. Chairman, on behalf of the committee, I so move.
All right, there has been moved in support. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 3, that Synod instruct the Board of Trustees to explore the proposed pathways for cultivating binationality, including its governance implications presented in this report, in consultation with the senior leader within Canada and the executive director. Mr. Chairman, I so move.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 4, that Synod instruct the Board of Trustees to encourage the executive director to identify the process for providing participatory training to staff and the Board of Trustees in order to develop a collaborative culture in which staff, leaders, and congregants are heard and work together to share, develop, and implement a common vision for the denomination. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
All right, moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you. Number 5, that Synod instruct the Board of Trustees to mandate the Executive Director and leadership to explore, embrace, model, promote, and implement a cultural model in the Christian Reformed Church of North America that enhances collaboration and effective communication within and between its offices, the Board of Trustees, and congregations, as described in the above suggestions. I so move.
Moved and supported. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Number 6, that Synod instruct the Board of Trustees to request that the newly appointed Executive Director, when one is appointed and within 18 months of being in the position, initiate a survey similar to the Wilder Research Collaboration Factors survey with Christian Reformed Church in North America departments, ministries, and agencies to determine success in making a cultural change within predetermined projects requiring 3 or more groups working together on a particular ministry. After breathing, I so move, Mr. Chair.
All right. After it's been moved and supported and breath taken, any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
People are probably aware that Wilder is not an adjective there, it's an actual proper name. Okay. So it could be both, yes, but. Number 7, that Synod appoint the new Executive Director as soon as one is appointed to serve on the task force reviewing structure and culture. I so move.
Moved and supported. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And finally, that Synod affirm that the Board of Trustees is authorized to approve revised senior leadership position descriptions as presented to the Board by the Task Force Reviewing Structure and Culture. And upon approval of the revised position descriptions, appropriate search processes may begin in order to fill the senior leadership team. I so move.
Support? All right. Any discussion? Oh, there is a speaker. Norman.
Or Monday, I think. I'm not sure what day we noted the report on the Canadian ministries and on the listening conversations. It passed by so fast we hardly had a chance to notice what we were noting. But one of the things in there that talks about, in terms of leadership, that the appointment of a new Canadian ministries director, I don't think I have the title right, but waits for the appointment of a new executive director. And I'm just wondering, given the extension of the present interim executive director's position, how these kinds of things are going to play out, or how the Canadian executive director, where that will fit now in the situation we are now.
The extended executive director wonders too. All I can tell you is that the absence of a new executive director is so recent that neither the task force nor really the Board of Trustees has had opportunity to say, so how do we adjust? I guess I'm asking you to trust both entities, the task force in the case of this motion and the board, to do everything possible to do it with deliberate speed, but also to do it not in advance of an executive director, so one walks in and has a cabinet already, but also in terms of the Canadian director position, not postponing it indefinitely either when one is needed. So we'll do our best.
All right, John Terpstra.
There's a word as in recommendation 8 that having taken another look at that, I think is more accurately, the word should be when. Authorized to approve leadership positions when they are presented. They've not yet been prepared, and so when they are prepared and when they are presented to the board can approve them. So just a technical correction, and I'll yield to Joel.
That was surely our intent, Mr. Chair, and it would not only be friendly to make that change, but unfriendly not to.
Not desiring to be unfriended on Facebook or anything else, I'm sure that the committee views this as friendly as well.
We have one more speaker, Ronald.
Ron Baker, Classis Muskegon. Who used to approve, or how are these senior positions normally approved?
The assumption is they would be approved by the board and ratified by Synod, but the exact number of them hasn't even been invented yet. So it's a little hard to say with precision.
I see no more on the queue. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries.
That completes the report on the structure and task force, culture and structure task force, Mr. Chairman. I just would also like to add that that the committee was very much helped both by Joel and Jewel and John and Peter in understanding the implications, and we got good input from them, and it facilitated our discussion on this and other issues wonderfully. And as a reporter, I'm deeply grateful for that as well. So.
Thank you, Art.
I just want to say on behalf of the task force how deeply gratified we are by the sincerity and intensity with which Advisory Committee 1 took on this challenge, and also the depth of insight and concern Synod itself has shown for these matters, and the value of the conversation we just had this afternoon to the task force, at least 5 of whom are in the room right now. So thank you all very much.
Could those individuals please stand at this time? You worked on that task force?
Here, let me tell you who they are. You know Scott and Jewel. Peter serves with us. Cal Artsma stood up there. Kathy Vandergrift is standing right there. Did I get everybody who's here? Those are the ones.
All right. We're going to move next to that. There's Steve Van Zanten, who's from World Missions, and I know that from yesterday we had some questions about that 90% of missionaries having to raise their support, and he is here to kind of answer some of those questions. I'm going to ask Steve to come down. And while Steve is coming down, I'm going to give you the note for how much money was raised from our archaic voting machines. The total is $2,010. Praise God. Please forgive all seats to the first clerk.
Steve Cabetu, the Canada Director, is also here with me, and he's going to be providing part of the information as well. little mic closer, sorry. Just to explain a bit more, with a bit more clarity, what it is that we're doing, why we're doing it, and how we propose to make this work. The long-term goal for career missionaries with World Missions, and we have a number of other categories, is being changed from 60% of a worldwide average cost to 90% of an individualized budget. And in the press release that went out this morning, you'll see some of the factors that are pulled out of that former worldwide average cost before we do the individualized budget for it. And for current missionaries, this is being phased in over a number of years. It's not an instantaneous jump. It's going to be gradual. And this movement is part of a movement toward greater responsibility on the part of missionaries for support raising that's been going on since the 70s. Clearly, this is a new phase, a significant change, but it's not brand new in that sense. And the reason why we are making this change, a significant change, is the long-term decline in the number of our missionaries. So in 1990, we had 140 career positions, 250 adults serving in those positions with husbands and wives. And today we have 52 career positions with less than 100 adults. And that drop has been consistent year after year. And it's not ending anytime soon. We can anticipate being down to 35 career positions by the end of this decade unless something major changes. And so that's what we're doing, making a major change. So Steve is going to add a bit more.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name is Steve Kabetu. I'm the Canada Director for World Missions. And I just want to add a piece to what was presented yesterday by the committee. So we're supplementing. We were very encouraged by what they presented, but we thought we might just add some more information to that, just to clarify some of the questions that were being asked. We've been working on a team that was looking at reviewing all the aspects of World Christian Reformed World Missions work with an acronym of ROOT, Review of Organization and Operation Team. And part of that is because we believe that Christian Reformed Church and Christian Reformed World Missions have important to do work to do internationally. So we should not just accept the continual shrinkage that Steve talked about of our missionary team and our ministry. Christian Reformed World Missions does much more than send missionaries overseas. We also support dozens of partner missionaries whose official employer is another agency or school, such as Wycliffe, ELIC, and some of you may be familiar with Hillcrest School in Nigeria. We also provide grants to international partners who are doing important ministry, but we try to do this in cost-effective ways. All of this ministry takes a lot of money. Now, over the last few years, we've observed that ministry shares, which is a very important part of our budget, has been declining. We're extremely grateful for the ministry shares that we've been receiving, but they feed only part of our budget. It doesn't cover 100% of our budget. In fact, I think the figure is 36% of our total budget that is covered by ministry shares. So ministry shares have been flat in nominal terms for decades. And I think it's about 3 times over the last several years that ministry shares were actually shifted from Christian Reformed World Missions to other agencies. So our ministry shares don't go nearly as far as they used to. So hearing the concerns we heard here yesterday, we just want to reassure you that at Christian Reformed World Missions, we're doing as much as we can to make sure that the missionaries aren't carrying this burden on their own, that the staff of Christian Reformed World Missions is also doing their part. So agency staff recognize the fact that the increase in these support levels will take work on the part of everyone. So over the last year, we've developed a plan on how we're going to engage this. And Steve is going to talk about part of that plan of how we introduce this and how we can be a support to the missionaries as they do that. Steve, you can take that.
So it was heartwarming yesterday to hear your discussion about and your concern about missionaries, about the challenge of support raising, and we certainly want to minimize that challenge as much as possible. And so a number of things that we have planned should do that. First of all, we're going to be providing regular training events, ongoing coaching to missionaries in this important part of their task. We are going to be encouraging them to develop something that Eastern Mennonite Missions pioneered, missionary support teams. So these are folks that would gather around missionaries, supporting them in a variety of ways, including the support raising task. Some of them have a hard time asking for support, whereas their friends and supporters might be able to do that as well. And thirdly, we have something called the Johanna Veenstra Missionary Support Fund. We recognize that not all missionaries are going to be good at this. Some people don't have a lot of connections, a lot of family members, and that's one of the key ways that people gain support. So this Johanna Veenstra Missionary Support Fund is going to be available for people to give to. It's going to be the destination for some of our estate giving, and it will help folks who have particular challenges in the area of support raising. One of the best ways to reduce the wear and tear on our missionaries in the support raising task is for church leaders like you to review what sort of support financially you're giving to your missionaries through Faith Promise, through offerings, through the church budget, whatever the means is, and compare what you're doing now to what you did 20 years ago. And then compare other changes in your church finances, pastor's salary, the general budget. I think many of you will be surprised to find that you're giving your support for church, for the missionaries of your church has not gone up as much as other areas of ministry. For many years, World Missions has been encouraging the idea of fewer but deeper relationships with missionaries. So instead of supporting 10 or 12, which some congregations do, focus on 3 or 4. Support them more generously. And that way, it's a win for all sides. From the church's perspective, you get a deeper relationship, more time with your missionary. You can expect more of them. From the agency's perspective, it reduces cost. And from the missionary's perspective, they have fewer churches and fewer destinations to go to during their home service. So those are some of the strategies that we have in mind. We recognize this is a big challenge. But we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is important enough that we need to adapt our methodology of delivering that gospel in order to make it possible to do so going forward.
Thank you, Stephen. And Steve, if you would mind take a couple of questions from people. Gary, and then Victor.
Gary Roos from Classes Hackensack. 2 things. First of all, a little anecdote. I was visiting my sister-in-law's church in Virginia, which is a large church from another denomination. And as I was walking through the halls, they had pictures of all the missionaries they were supporting. There were nearly 80 of them. But then I started taking a closer look, and I read the letters that were attached. And it said, "Thank you for your $50. Thank you for your $100. And as a former missionary, I thought that was a rather empty claim that we're supporting, 80 missionaries. I fully agree we need to have fewer churches supporting, 1 or 2 missionaries where there can be that efficiency, interaction. I think that's a great thing. The second thing, I would like to ask about the decline of career missionaries. Is it because career missionaries are not forthcoming, or they're forthcoming, but the mission has to say, we don't have any budgeted slots for you?
Yeah, the way that our agency advertises for positions is, unlike a parachurch sort of setting, we have a slot. We have a budget for a position in a particular place. We advertise for it. People apply or don't apply. We have had situations where we have nurtured a candidate, where a seminarian has done an internship with us, and then when they graduate, we don't have a slot for them. And we have to say, sorry, there is no place among in a career status for you to serve.
Okay, so I'm to understand then that budget does control who goes to the mission field. In other words, it's initiated from the mission rather than missionaries or would-be missionaries who would say, I'm interested in a certain field, could you send me? Is that?
Well, I can reflect on my own situation. In 1996, I was a pastor in a church, and I felt called to ministry in Eastern Europe. I came to World Missions. I said, here am I, send me. And the answer was, we have no positions in Eastern Europe. But Gord Byes, in all his creativity, pointed me in the direction of another agency that World Missions would partner with, and I ended up serving with that agency in Romania and onwards. So we have used that kind of strategy, but there was no career position available for me at that time.
Okay, thank you very much.
Grace.
Grace Krulin, Classes Lake Erie. Our church, River Terrace Church in East Lansing, has developed a partnership with an HIV/AIDS ministry through the Christian Reformed Church denominational structures. And it's a church-to-church partnership. And after we did that, we realized we should have missionary partnerships as well. And the nurturing and care of missionaries that we take on board to support involves much more than the money. And we're not very good at this yet, but we have a vision that we would stay in contact with them. It's easy to get a 3-minute video, post it up in Dropbox, show it during your offering. People dig deeper. If you promote them, promote relationships, you get more money. I know not everyone takes specific offerings, but I think that relational piece, not only for money, but for prayer support and for making the missionaries feel cared for by the congregation is important.
Larry, then Perry.
Steve, I'm wanting to understand so that I can better communicate with the people back home. I'm not connecting the dots well. The number of missionaries is down significantly, and I'll email you for those numbers again. And the percentage of funding has to be raised, and I understand how you're doing that. Help me connect those dots. It would seem counterintuitive, fewer ministries, ministry shares, the more money to spread around to fewer people, but it's going the other way. Is that made up by the decreased ministry share total received? Help me understand how to explain better.
Okay, I'm not sure I quite got the question.
Okay, in other words, fewer ministries, or fewer missionaries being sent, correct?
Yes.
And the percentage of amount for each being raised significantly, and I understand some of the rationale, but help me understand, that's counterintuitive. You got X amount, fewer, divided seems to be go the other way.
Oh, okay, all right. So you're saying there's a X number of dollars of ministry share. We have fewer missionaries now than we did previously, so there should be more dollars per missionary through ministry share. Yes, on the other hand, our costs have gone up exponentially. So this is where I was going with comparing it to salaries and budgets and so on. And the curve in terms of the growth of costs has been steeper overseas than domestically. So I just looked at the goal amount for 96-97, and just using the old system, that goal amount has doubled. So yeah, the costs are going up so that the same number of dollars are not getting us the same amount of ministry or the same number of missionaries. And that's what looks like we're heading for in the future as well. So that the same number of dollars, ministry share dollars, are going to produce fewer ministries, fewer missionaries in 2020 than they do in 2013.
All right, Perry, then lastly, Victor.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Perry Tinklenberg, Classes Columbia. In May 1980, I had an interview with World Missions, and the executive director, Eugene Rubing, said to me, "Welcome to the family. You as a seminary intern are the same as the doctors of theology and the medical doctors that we had." In May 1992, when I had my exit interview, it was very clear that I was no longer the same level of family as the office staff. I wonder what the culture of World Missions is today. Will the office staff be raising 90% of their support and their salaries as well?
You want to respond? It is an excellent question and one that's been asked frequently in the past. And you may know that some of the parachurch agencies do have that kind of scenario where people that work in the office at Wycliffe in Orlando do raise their support-raising missionaries like the people on the field. We got one of our missionaries in West Africa sent back an email in response to this change, and he said, in general, I'm supportive of this. My wife grew up in a parachurch mission agency. I've seen this coming. I think you ought to be doing this. But it's going to take a cultural change in the CRC. And to have people think about raising support for missionaries and needing to make this 90%, that's going to take a cultural change. It would be another cultural change to get people in the CRC to give money for office staff. Some office staff, and myself included, we do get some support from people, mostly people who supported us when we were overseas. And they've continued that support. But it's very difficult to get people to give money for office staff. One way that we've thought about working with this reality is to have office staff raise money for projects. That seems to have much more potential.
Victor.
Victor Coe from the classes of Alberta North. I want to thank you for your ongoing work as the World Missions. Friends, I did not appreciate that applaud, and I wish that you would take that with grace. We don't know what's going on, but here's my comment and a question, and I'll go take my seat. It disturbs me deeply that if I heard you correctly, that because we have no money, we have less missionaries. Synod, something's not right here. Something is not right. And it's not only their concern, but it's our concern. So that's my comment. And here's my question. Can you recall cases, times where our people have come to you, here I am, send me. And have they heard, no, we can't because we have no money?
That's a good point that's been raised, and I think what we want to make sure that we can leave the message with all of you here as delegates is that we have heard those same concerns, even from our missionaries. With less money coming in, and with ministry shares doing less than they used to, at this point only 36% of our budget, what do we do? And exactly how much of it are we carrying from the staff perspective? So I'll give you a little bit of a breakdown so that we can at least bring some clarity to that piece of the equation. Of our budget, the Christian Reformed World Mission budget is broken down into field-related expenses and ministry to the CRCNA, which takes up 83% of our budget. Support raising alone takes up 8.7, close to 9% of the budget. And those are the efforts to help missionaries raise their funds, including for staff time and so on. Administration takes 7.6 of the budget. We're trying to be as prudent as we can to make sure that we're doing our part as finances go down to take this to the churches. As a matter of fact, by next week, there's a letter going out to all your churches, which will break down all these expenses and exactly what efforts we're making to make sure that the missionaries don't carry this burden on their own. It should be an effort from all of us. And we brought it here today so that we can bring clarity to the issue. As we can see, there's concern, not just from our missionaries, but from the churches and the people who support our missionaries. We're concerned, and we're going to do everything we can as staff to make sure that our missionaries don't suffer through this. If we're going to bring about changes, we're looking at ways of seeing how we can have staggered benchmarks so that folks who are trying to raise their support to that 90% It's not a punitive measure. It's something that helps us be sustainable as an agency.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen and Steve, for answering those questions. And I'm going to rule that we've had enough questions on that, and we need to move on because our time is short. And if you would please turn with me to 6B, which we tabled. 6B, the chair is Mark Van Steed, reporter Drew Sweetman. We tabled this motion a little back, and if we can take care of that and as they come. One announcement. Advisory Committee 7 is asked to meet upstairs in room 263 during the afternoon coffee break. Advisory Committee 7, meet upstairs in 263 during the afternoon coffee break.
Mr. Chair, I am aware of the duplication that this motion presents to the floor as it addresses the Board of Trustees report that we went through both before and after lunch. But I'd like to remind the delegates that this motion was brought to Advisory Committee 6, not because we were charged with reviewing the report, but because we wanted to bring a response to the overture that dealt with the denomination's efforts to fulfill the Great Commission. So I believe the motion has been, it's been moved and supported, and it's open to discussion.
All right. Discussion on the motion to respond to Overture 15. Any discussion? I see no one on the speaker queue. Ready to vote? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you very much. We are going to adjourn for coffee, and I have one more announcement. The campus ministers, along with their currently those involved or who have been involved with campus ministry, are requested to promptly make their way to the banner table at the afternoon coffee break for a group photo. Go get your picture taken. And be back by 3:30. And our next thing we'll take up is specialized ministry on the way back.
Should have given a little time. He got some time.